Hello students, welcome to aimsindia online classes. This is a chemistry session. Here we are discussing about chapter matter. In this session, we are going to see about chemical compounds. In the earlier sessions, we have seen the classification of matter based upon the chemical composition, and in that, pure substances. That is, matter classified into two categories: pure and impure substances. In the pure again, pure substances are again classified into two types. They are elements and compounds. About elements, we have seen how they were classified, what are elements. Now we are going to see about compounds. Before that, what is an atom? Suppose by some means we could divide an element into smaller and similar parts. There would be a limit after which it will not be possible to divide it any further. Or even if it be divided, it would lose the properties of the element. This particle, this smallest particle of atom, which retains the properties of the element, is called atom of the element. So atom is the smallest particle of every element which retains the properties of the element. So if we take an element, any substance, we start, if we take any elemental substance, we start breaking it into small pieces, and there would be limit where you cannot to divide that particle obtained further into smaller particles. If you are able to separate, then it may lose its identity of element. That smallest particle which obtained, which is representing the properties of the element, is called atom of that element. The smallest particle of an element that retains the properties of the element is called atom of that element. This is a definition actually. The smallest particle of an element which retains the properties of that element is called atom. Okay. An element is made up of only one kind of atoms. Yes, an element will be made up of only one kind of atoms. All the atoms of an element are identical, but atoms of one element are different from atoms of another element. So if we take any element, it will be made up of only one kind of atoms. Atoms of an element will be all similar one to another. But if we compare the atoms of two different elements, they will be different in properties. For example, atoms of oxygen are identical, because if you take oxygen gas from wherever, if you observe the atoms of oxygen, all they will be similar one to another. Similarly, all atoms of nitrogen are identical. From wherever you collect this nitrogen, the atoms of nitrogen will be same. They will be identical one to another. But atoms of oxygen are different from atoms of nitrogen. Atoms of oxygen and atoms of nitrogen, they will be different from one to another. Atoms of an element are same in all respects. Atoms of different elements are different in properties. Is the point here. Okay. If you take an element, the atoms of that element will be same in all identical properties. What is a molecule? An atom can sometimes exist alone and sometimes in groups. Some elements, they'll be having atoms which can exist independently, but some elements, they have atoms which cannot exist independently. They exist only in the form of groups. A group of atoms is called a molecule. Okay, a group of atoms is called molecule. A molecule can always exist by itself, so it can exist independently always. But atoms, sometimes they may exist independently, and sometimes they may not. Some kinds of atoms, they exist independently, but some kinds of atoms, they cannot exist independently. They exist only in the group form. This group of atoms is called molecule. So molecules can exist independently. A molecule may contain similar atoms or dissimilar atoms. Yes, molecule means what we are telling here. It is a group of atoms. So a molecule may be formed by only one kind of atoms, or sometimes Dissimilar atoms or different kinds of atoms also, they may combine together to form one molecule. For example, see here, some molecules are shown. Examples of the molecules are shown here. In the first column, if you see the molecules, they are made up of similar atoms. Means these molecules are made from same kind of atoms. If you see the column 2, the molecules with dissimilar atoms. Means the molecules formed from different kinds of atoms. In the column 1, oxygen, it is made up of two oxygen atoms, same kind of oxygen atoms. Next, hydrogen. Hydrogen is made from two hydrogen atoms, similar atoms. Chlorine, nitrogen. So if you observe their molecular formulae, they contain same kind of atoms in them. Whereas if you observe the second column, some molecules are shown which are made from different atoms. If you see water molecule, it is made from hydrogen and oxygen. Sodium chloride, sodium and chlorine. Calcium oxide is made from calcium and oxygen. Ammonia molecule is made from nitrogen and three hydrogen atoms. So different kinds of atoms are there in these molecules. So from this you can understand that molecule may be made from either same kind of atoms or different kinds of atoms also. Okay. Atoms of most elements can exist alone. For example, iron, gold, aluminium, or silver, or some other noble gases we call, like helium, neon, argon. For these elements, the atoms they exist independently, alone. They can exist independent atoms. They won't be in the combined form. Mostly for metals and noble gases, atoms they exist alone. They exist independently. Okay. But in certain gaseous elements such as hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, chlorine, or iodine and bromine, atoms cannot exist independently or alone. For in those elements, they exist only in pairs. Always they will be in the combined state. Single atoms they do not exist. They exist together. A molecule of these elements contains two similar atoms. For example, if we take oxygen, we know the molecular formula of oxygen is O2. Means the molecule of oxygen contains two atoms of oxygen combined. Similarly, you can say nitrogen gas. In the nitrogen gas also, the molecules of nitrogen are containing two atoms of nitrogen in each. So two atoms of nitrogen combine together to form one molecule of nitrogen. But for some molecules, even they contain three atoms also, three similar atoms also. For example, if you see ozone gas, it has its molecule with three atoms of oxygen, isn't it? So some atoms are mostly metallic elements and noble gases. They contain atoms which exist alone, which can exist alone. But certain gaseous elements like nitrogen, oxygen, chlorine, bromine, these all they cannot, their atoms cannot exist independent or alone. They will be always in the combined form. They exist two atoms together. Their molecules will be containing two atoms of those elements. Some molecules they exist even with three atoms also. For example, ozone. Ozone contains three similar atoms called oxygen atoms. Okay. Next, we can therefore define a molecule as a molecule is the smallest particle of an element or a compound that can exist by itself. Okay, molecule is the smallest particle of an element or a compound that can exist by itself or that can exist independently. That is called molecule. But we cannot say this for atoms. Atom may or may not exist independently. Atoms always they cannot exist independently. Few atoms they can exist, but few atoms they cannot exist independently. But molecules of an element or compound they can exist independently. So we can say definition for molecule as A molecule is the smallest particle of an element or compound which can exist independently or itself. The molecule of an element contains one or more atoms of the same kind. Okay, if it is an elemental molecule or the molecule of an element, it will be containing same kind of atoms, either one or more. The molecule of a compound contains two or more atoms of different kinds. Okay, did you get it? Elemental molecule or the molecule of an element will be containing one or more than one atoms of the same kind. For example, if you see oxygen molecule contains same kind of two oxygen atoms. O2 we write it, isn't it? So that is called elemental molecule or molecule of element. If I say ozone, it also contains three same kind of oxygen atoms. So it is also molecule of element. Ozone, oxygen. If we say hydrogen molecular formula H2 we write. Means the molecule of hydrogen contains two similar atoms, two same kind of atoms. So it is a molecule of element. In the same way, the molecule of a compound contains two or more atoms of different kinds of atoms, different elements. Okay, molecule of compound contains two or more dissimilar atoms. For example, if you see water molecule, it is a molecule of water. What are the atoms present in it? Two atoms of hydrogen are present and one atom of oxygen. Two dissimilar atoms are there in this, isn't it? Okay. So molecule of a compound will be containing two or more different kinds of atoms. Molecule of an element will be containing one or more than one same kind of atoms. From these all discussions, we can conclude that facts that the smallest particle of compound is known as its molecule. The smallest particle of a compound is molecule. The molecules of compounds can be broken down into its elements from which they are made. Okay, molecule of a compound can be broken down into the elements from which it is made. For example, if you see water itself, water is made from hydrogen and oxygen. We know the molecular formula of water as H2O. It means it is made from hydrogen and oxygen. It can be broken down into hydrogen and oxygen, but not by physical means. It can be done only by chemical means, by electrolysis or by heating water to very high temperatures. By these means, water can be separated into its elements from which it is made, means that into hydrogen and oxygen. A molecule is the smallest particle of an element or a compound which shows all the properties of that substance, either it might be element or compound. So the smallest particle of an element or compound which shows the properties of that substance is called molecule. Okay. Symbol represents one atom of an element. On the other hand, molecular formula represent one molecule of an element or a compound. Earlier you have seen elements will be represented with their symbols. That we say the shorthand representation of an element's name is called symbol. For example, if we say hydrogen, what is symbol for hydrogen? Just we write H. So the shorthand representation of hydrogen name is H. That is called symbol. So how the atoms or elements are having symbols, in the same way molecules are also represented with shorthand representations. Those are called formulae. So molecular formulae represents one molecule of an element or a compound. Okay. So let us see what are compounds exactly. A compound is a substance formed by the chemical union of two or more elements in a different ratio, which is fixed by the nature. We cannot change this ratio no matter who does it. Okay. A compound is a substance formed by the chemical combination of two or more elements in a definite ratio, in a fixed ratio, which cannot be changed, even though however you prepare it. From wherever you prepare this compound, in whichever manner you prepare this chemical compound, the ratio of the elements combined in that to form it will be fixed. We cannot change that ratio. For example, if we take water itself, again, water is formed from hydrogen and oxygen. Two atoms of hydrogen combine to with one atom of oxygen to form water. So if you prepare this water from any kind of chemical substances by any means, the combination or the ratio of the hydrogen and oxygen will be similar, 2:1. Two atoms of hydrogen will be combined with one atom of oxygen. However you prepare, from wherever you collect this water, this ratio will be fixed. So a compound contains combined atoms in it in the fixed ratio. For example, the same it is given here. Water is made up of one part of oxygen and two parts of hydrogen. This ratio is fixed by the nature. It cannot be altered. Okay. So when the compound is formed, altogether a new substance is formed and the properties of which are quite different from its reacting elements. Yes, if a compound is formed from different elements, the properties of the compound formed will be entirely different from the properties of the elements from which it is formed. For example, the properties of water are quite different from its reacting elements, hydrogen and oxygen. We know hydrogen is a highly reactive element, lightest element. It is a gaseous substance, whereas oxygen is a which is a supporter of combustion. It is a gaseous substance, and when these two are combined, they form liquid water. Water is a liquid, and it is non-reactive mostly, isn't it? So the properties are completely changed when these hydrogen and oxygen are combined. Properties of water are different from the properties of hydrogen and oxygen. So like elements, compounds also carry names and symbols that we are going to learn in the higher classes. Okay. So for understanding in clear what a compound is, consider the facts given here. There are only 26 letters in the English alphabet, isn't it? In English alphabet only there are 26 letters from A to Z. Different combinations of these letters make a large number of words. So we can say how many letters are there in English. But can you say how many words are there? Words are uncountable words are there. But these all words, uncountable words are made only from these 26 letters in different combinations. Isn't it? Similarly, only 10 numerals from 0 to 9 make innumerable number of numbers, isn't it? There are only 0 to 9 numbers, but these numbers in combination they are forming innumerable numbers, uncountable numbers are there. But those all are formed or written only by using these 0 to 9 numbers only, isn't it? A variety of music is obtained by using different combinations of only a few basic units in the musical notes. We know they are, we call them sarigam padani. So by using only these words, musical notes, a variety of music is obtained. How they are obtaining this? By using different combinations of these musical notes. They're able to make a variety of musical musics. In the similar way, In the similar way, compounds are formed by the combination of elements. There are only around 118 elements are known so far. Only these 118 elements are responsible for these many uncountable compounds in this nature. For example, one atom of carbon combines with two atoms of oxygen to form a molecule of compound carbon dioxide. Isn't it? When the molecular formula of carbon dioxide is as a CO2. So carbon dioxide molecule is formed from one atom of carbon and two atoms of oxygen. Thus, the molecule is smallest particle of the compound. It has dissimilar atoms. So the the molecule of a compound will be containing dissimilar atoms. Means different kinds of atoms will be there. Example, it is shown here carbon dioxide. It contains one carbon atom, two oxygen atoms. Dissimilar atoms are there. There are millions of different compounds around you, isn't it? Whatever the substance you see, whatever the compound you observe, whatever the material you observe, it might be made up of one or more compounds. Probably everything you can see is one type of compound or another. When elements join and become compounds, the new compounds formed have a few or none of the physical and chemical properties of the original elements. They have a new life of their own. Yes, when a compound is formed, it will be having completely different properties from the element which it is formed. For example, if we say element is sodium, element sodium alone is a soft and silver shiny metal, and that can be easily cut with a knife also. We told sodium is one of the soft metals. It can cut with even knife. It is a very reactive metal. Even though it is being soft, it is highly reactive metal. Its melting point is around 97 degrees Celsius temperature, and it reacts violently with water. If you drop a piece of sodium into water, it blasts up. It reacts violently with water. Whereas element chlorine, it consists of chlorine molecules Cl2. Chlorine is a non-metallic greenish yellow gas. It is highly toxic, dangerous it is, and it was used as warfare agent during World War One. They are used to kill the enemies because it is one of the toxic gases, poisonous gases. So its boiling point is around minus 34 degrees Celsius. So observe this, these two are having certain properties which are different from one to another. Okay. Now, when the sodium and chlorine combine, they form non-reactive substance called sodium chloride. NaCl is formed when sodium and chlorine combine. It is a brittle, colorless, crystalline, hard solid having a melting point of around 800 degrees Celsius temperature. See, when the sodium and chlorine, which are having certain properties, they are combined, they formed sodium chloride, which is having entirely different properties from those two. It does not react with water, just like sodium, and it does not toxic to humans as chlorine, but an essential component of all living organisms. See how different it is, isn't it? Thus, a compound is a substance composed of two or more elements chemically combined in a definite proportion. See here, some compounds which we use regularly and their formula are mentioned here. See with the common names. Salt, which we use at home, it is actually sodium chloride, NaCl. Baking powder, sodium bicarbonate it is called. And next, vinegar, it is acetic acid. Sugar, sucrose. So in this way, these are mostly we use at our homes. In regularly, we will be listening to these chemical substances. So their formula are given here. Compounds in their formulae. Okay. And next, after studying about these pure substances and their two categories, elements and compounds, the next category of the matter based upon the purity is impure substances, which are also called mixtures. When two or more substances, either elements or compounds or both, combine in any proportion, then the resultant substance obtained is called a mixture. So about the mixtures we are going to learn in the next coming classes. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe our YouTube channel Aims Today for latest updates and recorded videos.